dressed like a Monsignor. The Basilica of St. Peter's in Rome, where I was ordained, has a privilege given to, I think it was Pope Urban VIII who did it, that whoever is ordained in the Basilica of St. Peter's may dress as a Monsignor, but he doesn't have the title. So I dress like a Monsignor, but I'm not a Monsignor. I'm Father Hesse. And, or Father Gregory. If you want to call me Father Gregory, go ahead. It's fine with me. And, but privilege is given to a place, and not at the discretion of the one who holds them. That's according to canon law. The privilege has been given to the place. So I use the privilege, except in Advent and Lent, if somebody gets me a cassock that's all black. And this explains my dress. I'm sure that the same people who complained about my wearing black BDUs on the other tape are going to complain about my violet sash now. This here. Let them. If they have nothing else to worry about, they must be very happy people. I've shown you, and I'm sure it was tedious and boring for some, but it had to be. I've shown you how the Council operates, how the Council Fathers, the experts, and the theologians dealt with something as sacred as tradition. I've shown you that they are, objectively speaking, totally dishonest in this Council and contradictory to themselves. Now, going on in analyzing the documents of the very same Council, rest assured, I will not bore you with a full reading anymore, because actually the document on liturgy is somewhat interesting to all of us because we suffer from the results of it. But the other documents in the Council are so deadly boring that I might fall asleep right through the lecture of it. I will never know. I'm a man who likes to read Tom Clancy and Clive Cussler and the real page-turners, you know what I mean. I will never find out what, maybe the Holy Spirit, but I don't believe in personal inspirations. Maybe it was just the grace of God that enabled me to study this incredibly boring book 5 times over. I hope I'll never have to do it again, but I'm afraid I might have to. The Council is incredibly boring, incredibly loquacious, and packed with blah blah and what we call verbal diarrhea. Excuse me, but that's what it is. It doesn't say much, and the few things it says were disastrous, as you will see. However, I forgot to give you another beautiful quotation. I'm a collector, and you could help me with that. If you ever see those Protestant neon-lighted billboard signs outside the church with some wise cracks there, write to me. Collect them. Here's one. I was going to waste. Jesus recycled me. The other one. Kmart is not the only saving place. Sorry about that digression from scientific precision. As an appendix to what I said about Vatican II and liturgy, I have to clear up a mistake. A missal in 1570 is not binding to successors. As a matter of fact, one of the most prominent traditionalists in this country said that. Their argument very often is the following. Furthermore, by these presents and by virtue of our apostolic authority, we give and grant in perpetuity that for the singing or reading of Mass in any church whatsoever, this missal may be followed absolutely, without any scruple of conscience or fear of incurring any penalty, judgment, or censure, and may be freely and lawfully used. Nor shall bishops, administrators, canons, chaplains, and other secular priests, or religious of whatsoever order, or by whatsoever title be designated, be obliged to celebrate Mass otherwise than enjoined by us. We likewise order and declare that no one whosoever shall be forced or coerced into altering this missal. And this present constitution can never be revoked or modified, but shall forever remain valid and have the force of law. notwithstanding previous constitutions or edicts of provincial or synodal councils, and notwithstanding the usage of the churches aforesaid, established by very long and even immemorial prescriptions, saving only usage of more than 200 years. They say the same legal formula can never be revoked or modified, but shall forever remain valid and have the force of law, was used by Benedict XIV when he dissolved the Jesuit order. Therefore, if I was right in saying that quo primo must never be changed, Pope Pius VII was wrong when he reinstituted the Jesuit order and went against the decree of his predecessor. These people do not understand that we deal with a disciplinary matter, not a matter of faith. If a pope dissolves the Jesuit order, another one might as well say, well, we have the Jesuit order back again. I don't know if this was good or bad. Judging to what happens today, it might have been a very bad decision, but that's not the point. The point is, we are talking about disciplinary matters. I told you that the Pope cannot bind his successors in disciplinary matters and matters of positive law. The way how Mass is said, however, is not a mere question of discipline and positive law. If the oldest liturgical law of all is lex orandi, lex credendi, the law of what has to be prayed determines the law of what has to be believed, then Holy Mass is not only a question of faith, but the basis of faith. If you change Holy Mass around, and if Holy Mass is not what it was, then you have a different basis of the faith. That means you have different laws of praying, you have different laws of believing. So, when a pope uses a formula like this on the question if I may wear violet buttons or not, his successor might as well say, I don't care. But if a pope uses this formula on something as important as the Roman liturgy, his successor may not say that. Therefore, I read again, abbreviated, by these presents and by virtue of our apostolic authority, we order and declare that no one whosoever shall be forced or coerced into altering this missal, and this present constitution can never be revoked or modified, but shall forever remain valid and have the force of law. This constitution deals about the basis of the faith. It deals about matters of the faith. It cannot be revoked. When Pope Pius X decided that the Sunday during the year, is to be elevated to the rank, practically to the rank of duplex prima classis, that meant the rank of a very important feast, he did not revoke or modify this constitution. He did not say this cannot remain valid and have the force of law. On the contrary, he explained that he was restoring the importance of Sunday, because at the time of St. Pius V, there were a lot less saints in the calendar than you'll find now. So at the times of St. Pius V, there were many Sunday Masses in Green Chasuble. By the time St. Pius X was Pope, there were very few Sunday Masses in Green Chasuble, because most Sundays during the summer have some saint to be celebrated, some saint more important than the Sunday used to be. And this is not good. This is not the intention of Pius V, and it's not the Old Mass. So he elevated the rank of Sunday in order to have the Green Chasuble, part of the sign that every sacrament is, in order to have the Green Chasuble and the Sunday celebrated again, and not just commemorated. The very fact, we talk about interpretation. Is it the Herr Dr. Hesse who interprets this apostolic constitution, or the popes? Yes, it is the popes, not the Herr Dr. Hesse. It is not Father Gregory who interprets this constitution. The popes did. And if those traditionalists who say that this is not binding would bother to read all the decrees that you find in the Roman Missal of St. Pius V, issued by his successors, including John the 23rd, you will see that the popes interpreted quo primum as something unchangeable, because up till 1962, with the Missal of John the 23rd, You always found at the beginning of the Missal, quo primum, and all the decrees of the other popes who changed little things, rubrics mostly. And the popes who dared to change things in the Missal, even if it was only minor rubrics, explained why they did it. Now, if quo primum was not binding to a successor, why would the successor want to explain himself that well? If he has the right anyway to change things, he doesn't have to explain that. If the Pope says from now on, every priest who is ordained in Rome will automatically have the title of Monsignor, he does not have to explain that. If the Pope says, I want you to say the Rosary not only every day, but on Sunday 3 times. It might be a bit demanding, but he doesn't have to explain why he wants it. He's the Pope. Why did all the popes after Pius V, until Paul VI of most infelicitous memory, why did all these popes explain every single change they made? Because they knew that quo primum was binding, so they had to explain, we did not go against quo primum with what we did. And they explained why what they did was not against the will of St. Pius V, binding them forever. This had to be cleared up. It is ridiculous to argue against the binding authority of this document, because it's probably one of the most important ever issued, and it binds the popes. It binds the popes because of the Canon 13, the 7th session of Council of Trent, because of In Junctum Nobis by Paul IV that said we hold steadfast to all traditions, because of the tradition in the Church, because of the oath of incoronation, and because of all the teachings of all the popes until 1958. The teaching of the popes, what does that mean? What is the authority of a pope teaching? A pope can teach in an extraordinary magisterial manner or in an ordinary magisterial manner. A pope may define a dogma or condemn a heresy, binding every single Christian, not only in his conscience and obedience, but by his divine faith. Even in the new code of canon law, this rule has been maintained, believe it or not. Now, what's the difference between extraordinary and ordinary magisterium? The ordinary magisterium is when the Pope, in a non-solemn way, decides on moral issues or teaches theology. He teaches something about the faith. Pius XII, in the 1940s and 50s, was faced with modernist priests and bishops who said, we only have to believe the Pope when he pronounces a dogma. They said we don't have to believe and obey the Pope in the other things. Now, usually mankind has a tendency, just like a pendulum, one extreme to the other. Either it's far right or far left. Either it is beyond what is right or it is not reaching what is right. There are many people in this country who are really downright what should be called paperlists. If the Pope tomorrow dyes his hair green, I will do it too. Oh, the Pope can do everything. He's always infallible. He's not infallible unless he claims to be infallible and uses the necessary formula. The Pope has, in order to be infallible, he has to say, by virtue of my apostolic authority, I herewith declare, statute, and define that so-and-so, so-and-so, so-and-so. This is to be held forever by every Catholic, by every single Catholic, under the pain of excommunication. This is to be held forever. Every Catholic must believe it. Pope John Paul II used this formula once in his 19-year career as Pope. When he decided that women cannot be ordained to the priesthood, he said, this is to be, I decide this forever by virtue of my apostolic authority, and this has to be believed by everybody forever. It seems that this was an infallible pronouncement. When the Pope says, I think this and this and this and this happened, then he's just He's just speaking as a private person. Pius XII said in his encyclical Humani Generis concerning some false opinions which threaten to undermine the foundations of Catholic doctrine, in number 20 he says, "Nor must it be thought that what is expounded in encyclical letters does not of itself demand consent, since in writing such letters the popes do not exercise the supreme power of their teaching authority." So give you the sign where to repeat, where to continue with the text. "And generally what is expounded and inculcated in encyclical letters already for other reasons appertains to Catholic doctrine. But if the Supreme Pontiffs in their official documents purposely pass judgment on a matter up to that time under dispute, it is obvious that the matter, according to the mind and will of the same Pontiff, cannot be any longer considered a question open to discussing among theologians." I want to see who dares now, after having heard this, still to say that the Pope cannot bind his successor in the ordinary magisterium. That means with an encyclical. The Pope says here, in writing such letters, the popes do not exercise the supreme power of their teaching authority. But generally what is expounded and inculcated in encyclical letters already for other reasons appertains to Catholic doctrine. But if the Supreme Pontiffs in their official documents purposely pass judgment on a matter up to that time under dispute, it is obvious that the matter, according to the mind and will of the same Pontiffs, cannot be any longer considered a question open to discussion among theologians. When Pope Paul VI wrote Humane Vitae, he did not pronounce a dogma. But no future pope may ever dare to say that artificial contraception is all right. When Pope Pius IX condemned all kinds of heresies in his syllabus of errors, he did not proclaim a dogma. But woe unto the Pope who says the contrary. The Pope today says the contrary. So this is the teaching authority. The Pope can bind his successor in many things. Why? There's an old Latin saying, par in parem potestatem non habet. An equal does not have power in an equal. Yes, right. That's why, in all things that are left up to the individual Pope to decide, he cannot bind his successor. But when the Pope says, this here, from now on, has to be considered part of tradition, he doesn't have to say that verbally, literally. He just has to say, we condemn this error, we don't want this to be discussed any longer, and I herewith say that's what it is, or that is what has to be done by all Christians, by all faithful. Then he's making this part of tradition. Now the tradition does not grow, tradition does not know change. We'll talk about this in the next session. Tradition is something that has been concluded with the death of the last apostle. So the Pope does not add anything to tradition. He just says, this is part of tradition, this always has been part of tradition, and now that he has said that, no successor may say anything to the contrary. Never, ever. When the Pope in 1950 made the Assumption of Our Lady a dogma, again he did not say anything new. The apostles were witnesses to the empty grave. The Church has always believed that Our Lady is in heaven with body and soul. And even before Pius XII proclaimed it a solemn dogma, Pius IX would not have had the right to say, no, this is not true. He would have put himself outside the Church. The popes are absolutely bound to tradition. And this is the reason why Vatican II is unacceptable. We will now, and that's the last thing for today, analyze some of the most important points of the dogmatic constitution on the Church. Vatican II, Lumen Gentium, again, the first two words of the document, November 21st, 1964. It is not an irony, but providence of God, that November 21st, 1964, Vatican II pronounced the worst of all heresies, and November 21st, 1974, on the 10th day of this horrible document, Archbishop Lefebvre pronounced the principles of the Society of St. Pius X, saying that we hold steadfast to tradition, that we are faithful to the eternal Rome, not the modernist Rome of today. What is this modernist Rome of today teaching? It talks about the mystery of the Church. Since the Church in Christ is in the nature of sacrament, a sign and instrument, that is, of communion with God and of unity among all men, she here proposes, etc., blah, blah. This is number one of Lumen Gentium. Is the Church in the nature of sacrament? No. There are 7 sacraments in the Catholic Church. There is no Christ sacrament, Church sacrament, 7 sacraments. We have 7, not 9 sacraments. I know, I will be called a rigorist again, but the dogma has to be taken at face value. And Trent defined there are 7 sacraments, and whosoever says there is another thing but the 7 sacraments, let him be accursed, anathema sit. The Church is not in the nature of a sacrament, but it is a perfect society. We'll see that later. The Church is not a sign. The Church is an instrument, absolutely, yes. But the Church is not a sign. The Church is not symbolic. It's a reality. It's a perfect society on earth. It's the instrument with which Christ saves. You cannot call it a super sacrament for that. It is the perfect society, the instrument which contains and administers, as the only legitimate one, 7 sacraments. It is definitely an instrument of communion with God, but it is not an instrument of unity among all men. The Church is as much an instrument of unity among all men as I am Pope. I am Pope potentially. The Church is potentially an instrument of unity among all men. Actually, it is not. Christ said that he will cause wars, divisions, fights, family members fighting family members. He said, who is not willing to hate his own brother, mother, father, son, for my sake, is not worthy of me. He didn't mean the word hate in the sense we understand it today. The Latin word odire might as well mean avoid. Sometimes family members have to avoid other family members because they have the faith and the other ones don't. Christ did not come to unify all of mankind necessarily. He only wanted them unified in the faith, not outside. So the Church may be an instrument of unity among all men, but it definitely won't be. Non veni pacem mittere sed gladium. I did not come to bring the peace, but a sword. Then we are faced with a new concept of the Church here in number 5. This is not heresy, it is just truckloads of you know what. While she, the Church, slowly grows to maturity, the Church longs for the completed kingdom and with all her strength hopes and desires to be united in glory with her King. How does the Church grow to maturity if she's a perfect society? The Church cannot grow to maturity. The Church is infallible. The Church is indestructible. The Church is perfect. The Church cannot grow to maturity. Pope Pius XII, in the same Humani Generis, said it is a daring and wrong concept to say that the Church can grow in experience and maturity. He condemned that. He said the Church is perfect. The Church is indestructible. Christ said, et porte inferi non prevalebunt adversus eam, Matthew 16:18. And the gates of hell shall not prevail against her. With this statement, I have to add a parenthesis right here. If the Church is infallible, if the Church is perfect, and if the Church is indefectible, then why do I say that the priests, the bishops, and the Pope today are off their track, are in material heresy, material schism, and in a way do not belong to the church because they don't. The church is indefectible, not their members. I am not indefectible, I am not infallible, and I am not perfect. I realize that every time I go to confession. How perfect, indefectible, and infallible I am. My God. The members of the church are not indefectible. The hierarchy is not indefectible as far as the hierarchy is consistent of members. The church herself is a perfect society. The church herself is indefectible. Then if the church is at the same time visible, where's the church to be found? I understand. It's confusing. It's complicated. Is Cardinal Archbishop Mahoney, is he the Cardinal Archbishop of Los Angeles? Yes, he is. He's appointed Cardinal Archbishop of Los Angeles, but is he Catholic? No, he's not. Materially, he's schismatic and a heretic. These people do not belong to the church. Pope Innocent III said, "It is quite conceivable that the future Pope may teach heresy and put himself outside the church." Pope Innocent III did not say he ceases to be Pope. He said, it's quite possible that the future Pope may teach heresy and put himself outside the church, in which case we must not follow him. And he said the very fact that the Pope cannot be judged by any authority on earth should remind the Pope of the fact that the less somebody is judged by human beings, the more he will be judged by God. And I don't say it as a joke. Face it, John Paul II. The church is a perfect society as such, not in a majority. This is a horrible democratic concept of the church. A father in this country, a priest in this country, whom out of charity I do not want to name, said that Father Hesse obviously knows it, and the priests and all the bishops don't. Okay, if that's a point of reasoning, then we might as well draw up a new charter of the church as a democracy. I mean, not even this country is a democracy. It's a constitutional republic if you take the Constitution serious, which the president doesn't, nor her husband. But this country is a constitutional republic. It's not a democracy. But the church is a monarchy, an absolute monarchy. The monarch is elected by designated electors. This is to say the cardinals. The church is a monarchy. The Pope governs the church, and if he doesn't, then I can't follow him. And if he pronounces heresy, then I will not agree with it. And if he gives wrong commands, then I will not follow them. I can. St. Thomas Aquinas made that abundantly clear, and so did Innocent III, to name popes. Innocent III and Pius IX. And indirectly, Eugene IV. I cannot follow him, and I will not. But the church herself is indefectible. And she's not governed by a majority, but by tradition. Is it impossible that out of 3,500 bishops, 3,496 would go against tradition, 94 would go against tradition? Is it possible? Yes, it is. Yes, of course. They have not been promised the Holy Spirit. The majority does not decide what is right or wrong. If the majority decides what is right or wrong, I can tell you what is right or wrong. In that case, I'd have at least 3 girlfriends. Oh, the majority would agree with that. Not the majority of Catholics, but the majority of Americans would. And the majority of bishops nowadays. Maybe. I don't want to be sued for libel. Maybe. Here's an example of infelicitous wording. Really sharing in the body of the Lord, in the breaking of the Eucharistic bread, we are taken up into communion with Him and with one another. Why can't they say in the sacrifice of Holy Mass? This is not heresy, but why can't they say in this, number 7. Why can't they say in the Holy Sacrifice of Mass? Why do they have to say in the breaking of the bread? underlining the meal again. Martin Luther, the Herr Dr. Martin Luther, would have loved that. Now we come to something that is not just an infelicitous wording, but downright heresy. Number 8. Lumen Gentium number 8. In the second paragraph, I read, "This is the sole Church of Christ, which in the Creed we profess to be one, holy, Catholic, and Apostolic." They say that, yes, but how? "Which our Savior, after his resurrection, entrusted to Peter's pastoral care, commissioning him and the other apostles to extend and rule it." Him and the other apostles. Here we got the concept of collegiality. Christ did not say, "You are Peter, and upon all of you I will build my church." No, no. This is why in English it is still translated with the disappeared in the usage of English, second person singular. "Thou art Peter, and on this rock I will build my church." On thee, Peter. Not on you, Peter and the apostles. On thee. Thou art Peter. Du bist Petrus. Tu sei Pietro. Tu es Petrus, et superhanc Petram edificabo ecclesiam meam, et porte inferi non prevalebunt adversus eam. Tu es Petrus. Not vos estis Petri. Voi siete Pietro. Vous êtes Pierre. This church, constituted and organized as a society. Why did they have to say a society? It's not a society, it's a perfect society. It is the only perfect society. It is, at least, if you don't want to, if you want to avoid the term perfect, at least say the society. This church, constituted and organized as a society in the present world, subsists in the Catholic Church. I've explained this on the other tape, but I have to repeat it here. The Church does not subsist in the Catholic Church, the Church of Christ. The Church of Christ is the Catholic Church. I think it was Cardinal Ratzinger, let me always be careful, I really don't want to be sued for libel. I think it was Cardinal Ratzinger who said, yes, but the word esse in Latin, to be, is much stronger than the word subsistere, to subsist. If he said it, then he is a very wicked and sly and subtle liar. If he said it. St. Thomas Aquinas says, subsistentia est nobilissima forma essendi. Subsistence is the most noble form of being. He talks about God, St. Thomas Aquinas does. Now, God subsists in everything. Unlike pantheism, this is not God, except for an alcoholic. This is not God. But God subsists in the existence of this bottle. God subsisted in the winemaking for this bottle. God subsisted in the actions necessary to cast this bottle. And God subsists even in this tiny movement of my hand grabbing the bottle. He subsists to it. That means he gives it being. He does not identify himself with it. This is not God. This is not God, and my actions here are not God. Therefore, the word subsist means he is not the bottle. He gives subsistence to the existence of this bottle. But the Church of Christ is the Catholic Church. Therefore, the Church of Christ does not just subsist in the Catholic Church, it is the Catholic Church. Why did the Council say the Church of Christ subsists in the Catholic Church? Because in that case you can say, well, there's other churches in which he subsists. Indeed, the Pope, again, not I, the Pope is the competent authority to interpret this paragraph. Well, he very competently interprets this paragraph when he says that the Russian Orthodox churches, heretics and schismatics, are our sister churches. To the point that he calls the Ukrainian church, united with Rome, as something that separated itself from her mother church. So now, as Bishop Fillet pointed out so well, or Bishop Tissier de Malaray, I don't remember, so now We are the and. The Orthodox Church is our sister church, and the Ukrainian Church is the daughter to the Orthodox Church. So it's our niece church. Complicated relations, and that's what I call verbal diarrhea. Why does the Church subsist in the Catholic Church? That means it subsists to other churches too, the Church of Christ. Because, it says in the same number 8, nevertheless, many elements of sanctification and of truth are found outside its visible confines. Since these are gifts belonging to the Church of Christ, they are forces impelling towards Catholic unity. Now you got the reason. Now the circle is full. Unity in the Church means we reunite with the heretics and schismatics, then the Church will be united. Therefore, it is quite logical to say that the Church of Christ subsists in these other sister churches too. And that is why we are not united. Do you see the satanic reasoning behind this? I explained to you that the Catholic Church is always one and united. Therefore, the Catholic Church is the only one that is the Church of Christ. Now, Vatican II says we are not united because our sister churches, the Protestant churches, are not united with us. And that explains why the Church of Christ subsists in the Catholic Church, because the Catholic Church obviously is not the only one. If the Catholic Church was the only one, then the Protestants can only convert to the Catholic Church but not reunite it with us. They left the Church. But the present Holy Father, who is the competent interpreter for this document, admired the heritage of Dr. Martin Luther several times when he was in Germany. Therefore, these gifts belonging to the Church of Christ, the Church of Christ now is not only the Catholic Church, but the sister churches too, they are forces impelling towards Catholic unity. Now, how about this, nevertheless, many elements of sanctification and truth are found outside its visible confines? Is that true? Well, no. When a Protestant pastor baptizes a little innocent Protestant child, and a truck runs over them, and the poor innocent Protestant child goes to heaven, does that mean many elements of sanctification are found outside the Catholic Church? No. It means that the Protestant pastor administers the Catholic sacrament of baptism illegitimately and illicitly outside the Church. Unless it's an emergency, in which case every human being may baptize. But if a Protestant minister solemnly administers baptism in his Protestant garage, then, or temple, or a cute little New England church, then he administers illegitimately, illicitly, the Catholic sacrament of baptism, the sacrament that belongs to the Catholic Church, that is property of the Catholic Church. You see? So these, the element of sanctification called baptism is not found outside the Catholic Church, but is abused outside the Catholic Church. Having discussed this, there's another infelicitous wording here. Number 9. At all times and in every race, anyone who fears God and does what is right has been acceptable to him. He has, however, willed to make men holy and save them, not as individuals without any bond or link between them, but rather to make them into a people who might acknowledge him and serve him in holiness. That's right. At all times and in every race, anyone who fears God and does what is right has been acceptable to him. If the Council had followed this number 9 of Lumen Gentium, they would have never said that there are elements of truth to be found outside the Church, outside its visible confines. They would have never said that we have to strive for an ecumenical brotherhood with other churches. What is right? What is right? Well, converting to the Catholic Church, of course. What is right? St. Augustine says there are Catholic things outside the Church and there are many un-Catholic things inside the Church. Yes, that's abuses, sins, sacrileges, the new liturgy, stuff like that. Un-Catholic elements inside the Church. if it's still inside the church. And there are Catholic things outside the church. Oh yeah? I found one of the most beautiful sermons on the devil in St. Thomas Church in New York, which is Episcopalian. They still talk about the devil. The pastor there, may he convert to be a Catholic one day. I would hope for that, because he seems to be a good pastor. The pastor of the rector of St. Thomas Church in New York, 5th Avenue, 52nd Street. You find these sermons, you just donate a quarter and you take the sermon back home. Very beautiful sermon on the power of the devil, on the traps the devil sets in order to make us perish our soul. Excellent sermon. So that is a Catholic element outside the Catholic Church. But it's not an element of sanctification. It is a help for conversion. It is something that exists outside the Catholic Church, and for a sheer coincidence, not because of destiny, might be a help for conversion. This is how this is to be understood. When St. Augustine says there are un-Catholic things in the Church and Catholic things outside her. Now we come to new terminology. Number 13. The one people of God is accordingly present in all the nations of the earth. Mind you, in the same paragraph it says the church or people of God. That means now the people of God is a new expression for the term church. It's a new term. Church is identical with people of God. And this church, therefore, is present in all nations of the earth. That's at least optimistic, if you ask me, because as far as I know, in the Republic of Bhutan, or the Kingdom of Bhutan, or whatever it is, Bhutan, Catholic priests are not allowed there. In the Soviet Union, the Catholic priests were not allowed. Was the Catholic Church present? In a way, yes, underground. But the Council doesn't say underground. This is a new terminology. Now, everybody who wants to be holy belongs to the Church. Holding a rightful place in the communion of the Church, there are also particular churches, now you got it, that retain their own traditions without prejudice to the chair of Peter, which presides over the whole assembly of charity. Does this paragraph mean the Oriental churches that are united with the Pope? It doesn't say. A defender of the Council will say, of course, they mean the ones who are united with Rome. But then, some of them, and the Pope, starting with the Pope, say, oh, the Russian Orthodox Church, definitely not united with Rome, but it's a sister church. See, it's confusing. I don't know what to make of it. Number 14. Basing itself on Scripture and tradition, it teaches that the Church, a pilgrim now on earth, is necessary for salvation. Fine, I'm glad they say it. In number 14, in number 16 they don't. He is present to us in his body, which is the Church. A pilgrim on earth. What's the purpose of a pilgrimage? To find grace and enlightenment, to improve, to mature your spiritual life, to improve your spiritual life, to get better. Same mistake as before. The Church is perfect. She cannot be a pilgrim of